My stepdad Blaine's former wild side struck me like a bolt when I uncovered long-forgotten memories on his Sedona estate. I, Nova, 24, was playfully teasing him while Mom was off in New York at a seminar, and I was stirring up trouble. One snapshot ignited something intense and unpredictable. I was tucked away in the loft of the barn on Blaine's Sedona estate, rummaging through a dusty trunk in search of a rope to mend some harness gear. The space reeked of aged wood and leather, and with Mom away at her New York seminar, Blaine, a 62-year-old rancher with a storied past, was left to manage everything while I eagerly caused a stir. I brushed aside a moth-eaten blanket and discovered a faded photo album, its cracked cover spilling out images of Blaine from the 1980s. Long hair, a rugged vest, a bass guitar casually slung low, a cigarette dangling, captured under bright stage lights with a fierce gleam in his eyes. Another photo showed him astride a horse, lasso in hand, evoking a bygone era of bold adventure straight out of a movie. My heart tightened and a flush crept up my neck. I couldn't tear my eyes away. I seized the album, climbed down the ladder, and found Blaine by the stables, diligently wiping down saddles with a rag. His faded jeans bore streaks of dirt as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the pens. I dropped the album onto the worn table with a resounding thud. He glanced up, squinting, and I leaned in with a smirk. I never knew you were such a dynamo, commanding attention and handling life with such flair. He paused, rag in hand, and opened the album, his gaze fixed on a photo of himself in the midst of a performance, sweat glistening under intense stage lights. That was ages ago, a different man, he murmured as he returned to his work. Yet I couldn't help but notice a slight twitch in his jaw, a silent testament to memories he wasn't quite ready to forget. Stepping closer, I rested my hand on the table near his and said, "You don't look that different, you still have that edge, don't you?" He wiped his hands harder, saying, "I'm just digging up junk that doesn't matter," but his eyes flicked sharply toward me. I flipped to the horse picture, held it up, and said, "You must have had girls screaming for you, those moves were killer." He snorted, set the album aside, and declared, "You're full of it, those days are dead." I leaned in, my elbow brushing his arm, and said, "Dead or not, you still look good, better than most guys I know." He stopped, rag dangling, and looked at me steadily, as if sizing me up. I picked up a saddle strap, running my fingers along it slowly, and asked, "Ever played that bass for someone special? Maybe you could still strum a tune." He stepped closer, took the strap from me, his fingers grazing mine, and said, "You're stirring up nonsense. I haven't touched a guitar in years." I grinned, bumped his shoulder with mine, and said, "I bet you could. Those hands look steady enough." He held the strap tight, didn't pull back, and said in a low, rough voice, "I don't know what you're starting." I laughed, stepped away, and grabbed a pitchfork to move some hay, leaving him by the table as he flipped through the album. I forked hay into a pile, watching him out of the corner of my eye. He stopped on a shot of himself on stage mid-jump and muttered something about being young and dumb. I dropped the pitchfork, whirled back, and said, "Young or not, you still got it, didn't you?" Blaine shut the album, set it down hard, and warned, "I'd better quit while I'm ahead." I smirked, ahead is boring, and headed to the house, leaving him with the saddles and those pictures. I heard him kick a bucket as I left, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. He wasn't shaking me off yet. The next morning, I wandered into the forge behind the barn, where Blaine was hammering out a horseshoe, sparks flying off the anvil as the heat hit me like a wall. Mom was still in New York, probably buried in seminar notes, and the estate was ours. Blaine was shirtless under a leather apron, sweat rolling down his arms as he focused on the red-hot metal. I leaned against the doorframe, watching him swing the hammer. I cleared my throat loudly, and he glanced up, wiping his forehead and asking, "What do you want now?" I stepped in, grabbed an old belt from a hook, one I'd seen in those pictures, and tossed it on the workbench, saying, "I figured you'd need something cool to wear while you worked." He stopped, set the hammer down, and picked up the belt, running his thumb over the worn leather. "It hasn't fit in decades, too much ranch life," he said. I smirked, walked over, and leaned on the bench next to him. "It still looks good. You've still got that rocker vibe going strong." He shot me a sharp look and said, "You're digging up more ghost stories. Those days are gone." I nudged his elbow and said, "Gone or not, you're hotter than half the guys I've met. Bet you can still pull off that stage slider." He grabbed a rag, wiped his hands, and said, "I'm talking nonsense. Nobody cares about that anymore." I stepped closer, resting my hand near his on the bench. "I care. Those pictures are fire, and you're not some washed-up has-been." He brushed his arm against mine and said, "You're too young to get it." Rock was dead by the time I showed up. I grinned, picked up the belt, held it out, and told him, "Try it on, prove you've lost it." He took it, his fingers grazing mine slowly as he buckled it around his waist, grumbling it was stupid. I didn't laugh, I just bumped his shoulder with mine and said, "It works. Looks like you can ride or rock anytime." He adjusted it, his hand lingering near mine. "I'm pushing it," he warned. I winked. "Pushing is my thing, and you haven't stopped me yet." He grabbed a water bottle, took a swig, and offered it to me. Our fingers touched as I accepted it, and I sipped slowly, holding his gaze. "You must have been wild back then, you still have that spark," I said. He sent the hammer back on the anvil. "Wild got me nowhere, just a busted voice and bad knees," he grumbled, leaning closer, his shoulder brushing mine. I handed back the bottle, my fingers lingering. "Bad knees don't hide that edge. Bet you could still make a crowd scream." He smirked. "You're full of it," yet he didn't pull away. His arm stayed on the bench as the forge heat mixed with something else. I turned up the charm, grabbed a pair of tongs, twirled them, and asked, "Ever played bass shirtless like that for someone? It'd be one hell of a show." He set the tongs down, his hand brushing my wrist. "You're fishing for stories. I don't need those gigs, those days are history." I stepped in, barely an inch away. "History looks good on you." I'd scream for an encore. He gripped the bench tightly and said, "You're trouble." I laughed, "You like trouble," and backed off, leaving him by the door as he continued flipping through the album. Later that afternoon, while I was out by the pasture hammering nails into a wobbly fence post with the sun dropping fast over the Arizona plains, Mom still in New York debating seminar notes, Blaine rolled up in his beat-up truck. He hopped out with a coil of wire over his shoulder and said, "Keep swinging like that, and you'll split the wood." He grabbed the hammer from me, our hands brushing, and started fixing it himself. I wiped sweat off my forehead, leaned against the post. "You didn't have to swoop in, I wasn't hopeless," I said. He grinned, drove a nail clean. "I'm not risking a runaway cow because of you. Ranch life isn't a game." I grabbed the photo album from the truck bed where I'd stashed it, flipped it open, and held up a shot of him on stage mid-performance, crowd roaring behind him. "Back then, you weren't a game player, you were a heartbreaker," I remarked. He glanced at it and said, "That's noise, not life," and continued hammering, but slower. I stepped closer, resting my elbow on the fence. "Noise or not, you owned it. Bet you broke more than hearts with that vibe." He grabbed the wire, looping it as his arm brushed mine. "You're digging up dirt for no reason," he said. I grinned. "Dirt looks good on you," flipping to the lasso picture and holding it out. He took it, his fingers grazing mine. "I'd laugh if I saw you try that now. These knees won't take it," he noted. I leaned in, brushing my shoulder against his. "I wouldn't laugh, I'd cheer." "Bet you'd still nail it," I teased. He twisted the wire tight. "You make it sound too easy to impress," he shot back, and I replied, "You make it easy, looking like that." He dropped the wire, turned to me with his hand on the post, coming close and saying, "I'm stirring up nonsense again." His voice was low and gruff. I tilted my head, my hair brushing his arm. "Nonsense suits you. Why else would you keep playing along?" I stepped around him, grabbed a spare nail, and handed it over, my fingers lingering on his palm. "You can hammer all you want, your rocker spark isn't hidden." He took it firmly, drove it in, and bumped my elbow. "You're pushing buttons you don't have," he grumbled. I laughed. "Those buttons work just fine," and he only smirked, still not backing off. The truck's engine roared to life outside, and a neighbor's tractor began fixing his own fence. I jumped back, grabbed the wire coil, and looped it fast. We'd wake the whole county at this rate. Blaine stepped away, picked up the hammer, muttered about bad timing, and continued. I tossed him another nail. "Rockers live for a little noise," I called, bolting to the house. He yelled back to finish it himself, and I heard him curse as the tractor drowned him out. I knew I'd left him rattled, hooked, not running. That evening, in the quiet kitchen thick with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, I set the photo album on the counter and flipped through it while the pot gurgled. Blaine walked in, shirt off, wearing a faded band tee and jeans, grabbed a mug, and saw the album. "Why are you still on that kick?" he asked. I smirked, slid the album toward him. "I can't get over how hot you looked, rocker and cowboy in one." He poured himself some coffee and said, "You're beating a dead horse. Those days are dust." I leaned on the counter. "Dust or not, you still have it. Bet you could ride or riff any time." He took a sip, leaned against the sink. "I'm full of it. Nobody cares about old photos," he said. I stepped closer, grabbed a mug for myself, my shoulder brushing his arm. I care, those shots are fire, and you're not some washed-up relic. He smirked, set his mug down near mine. You're digging for compliments, he teased. I bumped his hip gently. You don't need them, you earned it, I replied. Blaine flipped to another stage shot in the album. I'd laugh if I heard you sing now, his voice rough. I took the mug from his hand, sipped slowly. I'd cheer, you'd still kill it, I said. I set the mug down, leaned in, flipped to the lasso picture. You looked wild. Could you still rock me? He took it, his fingers brushing mine. You're asking for a show. My glory days are over. These knees won't hold up, he murmured. I stepped closer, nudged him playfully. Flops don't suit you. You still have too much spark. He set the picture down, his hand landing near mine on the counter. You're stirring up trouble again, he warned. I winked. Trouble is my game. And he shifted his shoulder closer, admitting, I'm making this harder than it needs to be. I laughed softly. Hard as fun, rocker or rancher, you own it. His hand dropped near my waist as I leaned in. You could stop, but why would you? He just stood there, breathing fast. I grabbed the album, flipped it shut, and slid it across the table, our hands brushing. You're too good at this. You still have that edge, I said. Blaine stepped closer, his knee grazing mine. You're asking for it, he smirked. I replied, relentless gets results, and though he didn't move, I patted the spot next to me on the table. He came closer, his hand settling steadily beside mine. I leaned forward, my thigh nearly touching his. You like this, why fight it? He brushed his hand over my arm and said, I'm making a mess. I laughed, messes suit you. I care. His fingers hovered near mine as I set down my mug. I'm pushing buttons, and they work, I whispered, inching close. Blaine's gaze softened. But then headlights flashed outside, a truck cutting through the dusk. I jumped back, grabbed the pliers, and started yanking the wire. We better not get caught slacking. Blaine cursed, picked up the hammer again, and continued pounding, muttering about bad luck. I finished the post, hopped into the truck bed, and yelled for him to wrap it up. He climbed in, started the engine, and I stayed in the back, shouting through the window that rock stars don't lag. The truck lurched forward, and I laughed, knowing I'd left him rattled. Later that night in the ranch house, under a starry Arizona sky and with the estate quiet, Mom was due any minute from New York. I sat on the counter, flipping through the album as cold coffee sat nearby. Blaine entered again, this time with a mug and a faded band tee. When he saw the album, he asked, Why are you still on that kick? I smirked, sliding it toward him. I can't stop thinking about how hot you looked, a rocker and cowboy in one. He poured coffee, set the pot down, and said, I'm talking about dead times. I rested my elbow on the counter and replied, Dead or not, you still have it, bet you could ride or riff any time. He took a sip and leaned against the sink. I'm full of it. Nobody cares about old photos anymore. I stepped closer, grabbed a mug, and poured myself some coffee. My shoulder brushed his as I said, I care. Those shots are fire, and you're far from washed up. Blaine smirked, set his mug down, and teased, You're just digging for compliments. I bumped his hip, maybe. But you earned every one of them. He flipped the album to a stage shot and grumbled, I'd laugh if you expected a show now. My voice is shot. I took his mug, sipped slowly, and said, I'd cheer, because you'd still rock it. I set the mug down, leaned in, and flipped to the lasso picture. You looked wild. Can you still rope me in? His fingers brushed mine as he replied, You're asking for a show. I might be done with that now. These knees just don't hold up. I stepped closer, nudging him. Nonsense, those knees only add to your charm. He set the picture aside, his hand landing near mine. You're stirring up trouble again, he warned softly. I winked. Trouble is my specialty, and you haven't stopped me yet. Finally, I picked up the album, closed it, and slid it across the table with a final brush of our hands. You're too good at this. You still have that edge, I whispered. Blaine's eyes softened as he said, I'm not sure how far we can push this. I smirked, maybe far enough, because trouble always finds a way. The sun had long set behind the red-hued buttes of Sedona, and a cool, silent darkness settled over the estate as if nature itself were exhaling after a long day of fervent labor and passion. In the aftermath of the day's heated encounters, Blaine and I found ourselves alone on the wide, dusty veranda of the old barn, the only light coming from a scattering of distant stars and the faint glow of a single lantern swinging gently in the night breeze. The memories of wild performances and rugged days of rock and ranch mingled with the quiet murmur of the desert wind, each sound a whisper of the past that refused to be silenced. I leaned against the worn wooden railing, my gaze fixed on the endless sky, while Blaine, his features softened by the moonlight, sat on an ancient stool that had witnessed decades of his triumphs and tribulations. His eyes, deep and thoughtful, told a story of battles fought on stage and in life, a journey marked by scars and victories that still shimmered beneath his weathered exterior. For a long, wordless moment, we simply existed in that shared space between memory and possibility, the energy of our earlier banter transforming into a tender, reflective stillness. In that silence, I could almost hear the echoes of a long-forgotten guitar riff and the distant roar of an ecstatic crowd. The romance of the bygone era, with its raw intensity and unapologetic defiance, mingled with the gentle pulse of the present. Blaine's hand, roughened by years of hard work yet capable of surprising delicacy, rested on the back of the chair beside him. I wondered if he too felt the weight of those years, the inevitable passage of time that had tempered his wild youth without completely erasing its spark. The cool air carried a subtle fragrance of creosote and sage, and every exhalation seemed to draw out not only the heat of the day but also a sense of vulnerability that lay beneath our defiant exteriors. "Do you ever regret it?" I finally asked, my voice soft and hesitant. I meant the days of reckless abandon, the nights of endless music, the love affairs that burned bright and fast. Blaine's eyes flickered, and for a moment I saw in them a glimmer of both pride and sorrow. "Sometimes," he murmured, "but regret is just another word for lessons learned." His tone was gentle, as if he were revealing a secret meant only for the quiet intimacy of the dark. I shifted my weight and took in his words, realizing that every scar, every faded photograph, and every echo of laughter on that old estate had been a stepping stone leading us both to this very moment. The boundary between past and present had blurred into something more meaningful, a tapestry woven with threads of passion, resilience, and the undeniable magnetism of two souls who had never fully surrendered to the inevitable march of time. In that reflective pause, I understood that our connection, though born out of mischief and challenge, had matured into an unspoken respect and an acceptance of the scars that made us who we were. As the night deepened, so did our conversation. We spoke in murmurs about the days when every chord struck on a battered bass and every thundering beat of a drum set echoed the heartbeat of a generation. Blaine recounted stories of wild tours, of fleeting moments that felt eternal under the spotlight, and of the bittersweet taste of fame that eventually gave way to the enduring simplicity of ranch life. I listened, enraptured, as the past and present merged into a single, unbroken narrative, one that celebrated both the recklessness of youth and the wisdom of age. Eventually, the cool desert air and the quiet promise of the night coaxed our conversation into a gentle lull. We sat side by side, the silence now comfortable and filled with mutual understanding. The stars above, indifferent witnesses to our shared history, glittered like tiny reminders of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. In that serene stillness, any lingering doubts or regrets faded away, replaced by the resolute certainty that every moment, every wild, unforgettable, and sometimes painful moment, had led us here, to this point of calm acceptance and hidden hope. As I rose to leave, I paused and turned back toward Blaine, whose eyes met mine with a quiet smile, a silent promise that the spark of his rockstar days, and the enduring spirit of the man he had become, would never truly die. The night embraced us both, and with the first hint of dawn on the horizon, I stepped away, carrying the memory of that final, shared moment as a beacon for all the tomorrows yet to come. As dawn broke over the Sedona horizon, a gentle luminescence bathed the rugged landscape in a soft, ethereal glow. I remained on the veranda long after the stars had winked their final farewell, immersed in the quiet reverie that only early morning can bestow. Every breath of the cool desert air carried a subtle reminder of the passion and tumult of the night before, a mingling of bittersweet memories and the raw promise of new beginnings. Blaine, still lingering in the shadows of his storied past, appeared almost contemplative in the emerging light, his features softened by the gentle caress of dawn. His eyes, reflecting decades of rock and roll defiance and the hard-earned wisdom of ranch life, seemed to speak in silent verses that celebrated both wild abandon and measured grace. We exchanged no words at that moment. Instead, our shared silence was an eloquent testimony to a bond forged in the crucible of time, tempered by experiences that defied easy explanation. The muted chorus of the awakening desert, the rustle of wind through ancient pines, the distant murmur of a waking creek, the soft sigh of the earth itself, wove around us like an intimate ballad, carrying away the remnants of yesterday's heat and heralding the cool promise of today. In that suspended instant, I felt as though the boundaries between past and future had dissolved entirely, leaving only the indelible mark of a shared history and the incandescent hope of what might yet be. Each heartbeat echoed the rhythmic pulse of an era when every chord and every whispered secret had mattered immensely. And as I finally rose to greet the new day, the memory of that quiet communion with Blaine became a steadfast beacon, illuminating the path ahead with the assurance that even the fiercest flames of youth can, in time, settle into a warm, enduring glow.